What if the real reason you keep failing is because you're terrified of who you'll become if you actually succeed? It's a strange question, almost offensive. After all, who doesn't want to succeed? Who doesn't dream of a better life, more recognition, more freedom? And yet, if we're honest, truly honest, there's a silent fear lurking beneath our ambition. Not the fear of falling short, but the fear of finally making it. You've felt it before. That moment right before the opportunity arrives, when everything seems to align and you know deep down you're capable. But something inside pulls back. You hesitate, you procrastinate, you sabotage. And then, once again, you watch yourself fall just short of the finish line. And you tell yourself the usual lies. The timing wasn't right. I wasn't ready. Maybe next time. But how many next times are left? What if the enemy isn't your lack of skill, talent, or intelligence, but your own unconscious resistance? A hidden part of you that's terrified not of failure, but of change. Because success demands transformation. It asks you to let go of who you were in order to become someone new, someone bolder, more visible, more responsible. And that shift, though liberating, also feels like death. Not a physical death, but a death of identity, of familiarity, of comfort. And so, without realizing it, you cling to your struggle like a safety blanket. You protect your current self by destroying your future self. Freud once wrote that the unconscious doesn't care about what you say you want. It only serves what it believes will keep you safe, even if that safety is your own stagnation. So let me ask you again gently, but directly. Are you sure you're afraid of failing? Or are you afraid of what success will require you to leave behind? Because until you face this truth, you may keep finding ways to lose, just to avoid winning on terms that would shatter the version of you you've clung to for so long. Before we dive deeper into the heart of this message, I want to ask you for something simple but meaningful. If this video has already stirred something inside you, if a part of you feels seen, understood, or even slightly awakened, then take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. Not for the algorithm, but for yourself. Because every week I share content that's not just designed to inspire, but to challenge, to reveal, to guide you inward. And when the next video drops, I want you to be the first to receive it. Not by chance, but by choice. Let's keep walking this path together deeper, further, and truer. You probably know someone like this. Let's call him David. David is smart, talented, charismatic. Every time he shares his ideas, people listen. He's the kind of person others describe as full of potential. He's been working on a book for years, one he says could change people's lives. And from what he shared, it truly could. He gets invited to speak at events. He gets offered job promotions. He even landed a publisher who was ready to sign a contract for his book, and yet he never finishes. Something always comes up. He rewrites the manuscript again, or says he's not ready. He turns down the speaking engagements. He passes on the promotion. People around him encourage him, push him, even beg him to take the leap. But David always retreats, not because he's lazy, not because he's incapable, but because the moment he gets too close to crossing that threshold from potential to reality, he shuts down. He says things like, "I don't think I'm the right person for this," or "I don't want to mess it up," or "It's just not the right time." But if you look deeper, something else is happening. Something most people never see. David's not afraid of failing. He's afraid of who he might become if he finally allows himself to succeed. Because success isn't just about achievement. It's about exposure. What happens when the world finally sees you? Not the version you carefully manage in silence, but the real you, unfiltered, visible, vulnerable. David fears what it means to be seen. He fears the weight of maintaining something he worked so hard to reach. He fears the loss of his current identity, the underdog, the dreamer, the one who could have. There's a strange safety in almost succeeding. It keeps hope alive without ever risking transformation. As long as you never fully step in, you never fully have to let go of who you've been. And deep down, David doesn't feel worthy of that next version of himself. He tells himself stories like, "I didn't grow up in the right family," or "People like me don't get that kind of success," or "I don't want to become arrogant." But those are masks, defenses. They protect him from the real fear, the fear that stepping into his power will mean stepping away from the comfort of his limitations. And this isn't just David. This is you. This is me. This is all of us at some point in our lives. We flirt with success, we touch it, we sabotage it, and then we mourn what could have been, while secretly breathing a sigh of relief that we didn't have to change. I remember my own version of this. There was a time I was offered a position I had worked years to reach. It was everything I said I wanted. More impact, more visibility, more creative freedom. I said yes, and then I froze. My sleep became erratic. I started second-guessing every decision. I questioned whether I had tricked everyone into believing I was smarter than I was. I nearly turned down the opportunity, convinced that someone else, someone more together, should take it instead. It wasn't until months later, in therapy, that I heard the words that changed everything. "You're not afraid of failing," my therapist said. "You're afraid that if you succeed, you'll lose the version of yourself you've always known." And right now, that version still feels safer than the unknown. And that's the paradox, isn't it? We say we want to grow. We crave transformation. But every real leap forward demands a burial. A part of us must die for the next part to live. And death of identity, of old stories, of old roles is terrifying. So we stay stuck. Not because we're incapable, but because we're loyal. Loyal to who we've been. Loyal to the comfort of self-doubt. Loyal to the pain that became familiar. We wear our limitations like armor. Not because they protect us from failure, but because they protect us from being reborn. David still says he'll finish the book someday. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. But what is more important is whether he'll ever stop clinging to the identity of the man who is almost ready. Whether he'll allow himself to become the man who actually is. And you, where are you in that journey? Are you David, standing at the edge of your own expansion, afraid of who you'll become if you leap? Or are you finally ready to risk the death of who you were, for the truth of who you might be? Sigmund Freud once said, "People do not fear the future. They fear losing their familiar identity." At first glance, it sounds counterintuitive. We assume the anxiety we feel about success, change, or growth stems from the unknown. But Freud saw something deeper, something far more primal. It's not the future we resist. It's the death of the self we've come to know. This is the hidden machinery behind self-sabotage, a psychological defense mechanism Freud explored throughout his work. When the unconscious mind perceives that a new version of ourselves threatens the survival of the current ego, it will begin to quietly resist the very progress we consciously claim to want. Think about that for a second. Your own mind may be working against you, not because it wants you to fail, but because it believes it's protecting you. That's the paradox of transformation. Your ego, the identity you've spent years constructing, is not built for your evolution. It's built for your survival. And survival prefers the known. Even if that known is limiting, painful, or toxic, it is still familiar. And to the ego, familiarity equals safety. So when the possibility of true success appears, a new identity, a new life, a new way of existing, the ego panics. It doesn't care that this new life is better. It only sees that it's different. And different feels like death. This is where Freud's concept of ego death becomes deeply relevant. Ego death is not about losing your mind. It's about surrendering the parts of your identity that were built from fear, defense, and external validation. It's the psychic unraveling of your old self, the shedding of roles, labels, and stories that no longer serve you. But here's the thing. Ego death isn't elegant. It's not poetic. It's brutal. It can feel like losing yourself, like drowning, like grieving someone who is still alive, because that someone is you. No wonder we sabotage ourselves. The fear isn't irrational. It's existential. Freud believed that beneath every self-sabotaging behavior is a buried conflict between what the conscious mind desires and what the unconscious fears. That conflict is never resolved by willpower alone. It requires excavation, going inward, tracing the threads of your fear to their source. But Freud didn't walk that path alone. Carl Jung, his once disciple and later philosophical rival, took this idea even deeper. Where Freud saw the unconscious as a container of repressed desires, Jung saw it as a sacred territory, a mythological underworld where the soul hides its most painful truths and its greatest potential. For Jung, the journey was not just about uncovering hidden fears. It was about individuation, the process of becoming whole. Individuation means integrating the many parts of your psyche: the persona, your public face; the shadow, your denied self; the anima, animus, your inner masculine feminine; and the self, your full, unified being. It is the unfolding of who you truly are beneath the masks you've been taught to wear. But here's the price. You cannot individuate without confronting pain. In fact, Jung believed that suffering is not a failure of the psyche, it is its invitation. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. This pain is not punishment. It is the cost of shedding your false self. It's the sting of letting go of your need to please, to perform, to control how others perceive you. It's the mourning of your old dreams, the ones you outgrew but never dared to admit. It's the loneliness of outgrowing relationships that were only aligned with your former self." So, what does this mean in practical terms? It means that every time you get close to real success and you find yourself backing away, you're not weak. You're in the early stages of psychological metamorphosis. You're standing at the doorway of ego death. And the choice you face isn't about success or failure. It's about loyalty. Will you stay loyal to who you've been? Or will you risk becoming who you truly are? The path to transformation isn't paved with positive affirmations or surface-level motivation. It's paved with grief, with discomfort, with silence, with facing the parts of you that you've spent years avoiding. Freud would call this confrontation a necessary collapse of repression. Jung would call it a sacred return to the self. Both point to the same truth. Real success, soul-aligned, lasting transformation requires more than effort. It demands surrender. You don't just achieve a new life, you outgrow the old one. And the greatest barrier to that evolution isn't outside of you. It's the frightened voice inside that says, "If I let go of who I've been, who will I become?" That question isn't meant to be answered quickly. It's meant to be lived. But know this, that voice is not the enemy. It's the signal. The fear you feel right now, it's proof that you're closer than ever to something real. Not comfort, not applause, but truth. And truth, as both Freud and Jung knew, is the only force powerful enough to set the soul free. Success is often sold to us as the ultimate arrival, the moment we finally get what we want. The job, the relationship, the recognition, the lifestyle, the peace. But the deeper truth is more unsettling. Success isn't just about gaining. It's about letting go of comfort, letting go of the identity that helped you survive, letting go of the roles you've played to be loved, accepted, and safe. Every real step forward in life demands a quiet funeral for who you were. Not because that version of you was wrong or weak, but because it was incomplete. You see, growth is not addition. It's transformation. And transformation, by its very nature, is violent to the ego. It requires sacrifice not of your values, but of your attachments. Attachments to how people see you. Attachments to the old stories you've told yourself about who you are. Attachments to the beliefs that once protected you but now imprison you. This is where Friedrich Nietzsche steps in, not as a motivational voice, but as a philosophical mirror. He wrote, You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? It sounds dramatic, but he wasn't talking about physical destruction. He was pointing to something far more intense, the psychological incineration of your false self. Nietzsche knew that to become who you're meant to be, you must first destroy who you were told to be. And that's terrifying because we don't just fear pain, we fear the loss of control. We fear being reborn into someone we no longer recognize. It's not uncommon to cling to limitations just because they're familiar, to hold on to outdated dreams just because they feel safe, to stay small and visible and unchallenged because becoming more would mean confronting everything we've avoided for years. But here's the paradox. What we refuse to release is often what keeps us stuck. Many people never reach their potential, not because they lack drive, but because they cannot grieve. They cannot grieve the version of themselves that must die in order for a stronger, freer, more authentic version to emerge. They want transformation without disruption, evolution without discomfort, awakening without sacrifice. But life doesn't work that way. Nietzsche saw human greatness not in the ability to succeed by society's standards, but in the courage to recreate oneself again and again, to become the sculptor of one's own soul. He believed that becoming the Übermensch, or Overman, required confronting chaos, embracing solitude, and destroying all borrowed truths, not as rebellion, but as responsibility. You are not here to fulfill someone else's script. You are here to write your own. And that writing often begins at the exact moment you are most afraid, when life feels like it's crumbling, when the ground beneath you no longer supports your old self. But if you resist the burning, you resist the birth. Look around you. How many people live shackled to a version of themselves that no longer fits? How many drag their feet through careers, relationships, and routines that drain them, simply because they're terrified of facing the void? But in that void lies your becoming. You must learn to see the flame not as a threat, but as a teacher. It comes to purify, not to punish. And every time you step into it willingly, every time you choose to let go of what no longer serves, you step closer to truth, to alignment, to freedom. Nietzsche wasn't trying to romanticize suffering, he was trying to reclaim it. He wanted us to understand that suffering is not always a symptom of something wrong, but a signal that transformation is near, that you are shedding your old skin, that you are evolving. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to outgrow the people who no longer recognize you. It hurts to say goodbye to a version of yourself that kept you safe for so long. It hurts to stand in the fire of your own truth without knowing what will emerge on the other side. But what emerges is always more real. And reality, once you've tasted it, is worth any temporary agony. So ask yourself honestly, what are you still clinging to out of fear? Is it an old dream that no longer inspires you? A role that defines you but confines you? A belief that once guided you but now haunts you? What if success isn't asking you to try harder but to surrender deeper? What if the next version of you isn't found through effort, but through release? As Nietzsche said, you must be willing to become ashes, because only in that state stripped of your illusions, naked in your becoming, can you rise not as who you were told to be, but as who you truly are. Let me remind you of something essential, something life has tried to make you forget. You are not failing because you lack potential. You are failing because you're still holding onto a version of yourself that is no longer meant to survive. This version of you, the one built on fear, on doubt, on survival, was necessary. It helped you get here. It got you through trauma, through criticism, through a world that didn't always see your worth. But it is not the version of you that can carry what comes next, and that's okay. You don't need to hate who you've been in order to let go of them. You just need to be honest. That identity, that mindset, that emotional armor, it's grown too tight. And here's the truth most people never hear. You don't need to try harder. You need to release deeper. You need to stop obsessing over how to win. and start asking the more important question: who must I become to hold what I say I want? Because success is not just a matter of action, it's a matter of identity. It's not about achieving something that proves your worth. It's about becoming someone who knows their worth before the success arrives. This is where most people get stuck. They think they need more motivation, more discipline, more external validation. But what they actually need is a deeper internal transformation, one that allows them to become a vessel strong enough to contain the very things they crave. That's the shift. Stop chasing the outcome. Start preparing the container. Because if your nervous system still sees success as unsafe, it will reject it. If your beliefs still equate visibility with danger, you will dim yourself. If your identity is still wrapped in the wounds of the past, you'll sabotage anything that threatens to heal them. And it's not because you're weak, it's because you're loyal. Loyal to the self that once kept you safe. Loyal to an emotional ecosystem that feels familiar, even if it hurts. You see, we often mistake our limitations for our personality. But they're not. They're just habits. They're just survival scripts. And like any script, they can be rewritten if you're willing to burn the old pages. Nietzsche said, "You must be ready to burn yourself in your own flame." How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes? That's what this really comes down to. The willingness to let who you've been die, so who you are can finally live. But don't romanticize this process. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. And it sure as hell isn't instant. You will feel resistance. You will grieve your comfort zone. You will question if you're losing your mind. But what you're actually losing is your cage. You were not meant to live in a constant state of almost ready, almost seen, almost alive. There is nothing noble about shrinking yourself for the sake of others. There is no reward for playing small, for over-explaining your dreams, for pretending to be less so others feel more comfortable. There is only exhaustion. There is only resentment. There is only the slow, silent death of your soul. So let me say this clearly. Stop trying to be successful. That may sound strange, especially coming from a voice that has walked you through all the psychological and philosophical dimensions of becoming. But hear me out. Stop trying to succeed, and start trying to become someone who can hold success without fear. Someone who does not flinch in the face of abundance. Someone who does not run from intimacy, visibility, or power. Someone who does not crumble when they're finally asked to rise. Because success isn't a trophy you win. It's a reflection of your internal capacity. It's not what you achieve. It's what you allow yourself to receive. But to receive, you must release. You must release the identity that tells you you're not enough. You must release the fear that says you'll be alone if you change. You must release the habit of abandoning yourself just to stay accepted. This isn't about doing more. It's about becoming more of who you already are beneath the masks, beneath the fear, beneath the stories that were never truly yours. So if you feel like you're standing on the edge of something, uncertain, afraid, yet deeply aware that you can't go back good, that edge is real, and you're not weak for hesitating. You're human, but now you have a choice: to keep repeating your past, or to risk stepping into a version of you that's waiting to be remembered. Because you're not afraid of the mountain. You're afraid of leaving the cave that kept you safe. But caves were meant for shelter, not for living. And the mountain, though steep, though treacherous, is calling you. Not because you need to prove anything, but because this time you're ready to rise not as someone new, but as someone is finally true. If this message stirred something inside you, if even a single line made you pause, reflect, or breathe a little deeper, then I invite you to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next awakening we explore together. This space isn't just about information. It's about transformation. And if you're walking this path too, I want you here. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this video hit you the hardest? What truth did you need to hear? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Let's grow, unlearn, and remember who we really are together.